Well, hello and welcome to our online Bible study. It has been a little while since we have had one of these, but going to try to make it more of a regular occurrence, and I'm really glad that you have decided to watch. We're going to be looking at a couple different passages today from the book of Galatians and then also from the book of Matthew. And for the first time today, going to be able to provide those for you on the screen if you don't have a Bible with you. So I hope you'll be able to follow along. We're going to start in the book of Galatians and going to be in the last chapter of the book of Galatians in chapter 6. And so I hope that you'll follow along with us on that. Galatians chapter 6, starting in verse 1, tells us, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. And then here's the verse that I really want us to focus on. He says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. And that's kind of the focus that we're going to look at, this idea here of fulfilling the law of Christ. And so I want us to think about what that means. He talks about here carrying one another's burden. And I think that is a pretty relevant thing for us to look at in the day in which we live, in the time in which we live, and really as we are called as Christians to live in a community together, a community of faith. I think when we look around us, we see that there are a great number of people who are fellow believers and are going through very difficult circumstances. Maybe it's the death of a loved one. Maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe it's some bad health news. Maybe they're just struggling financially or struggling with some difficult sin in their life. Whatever it is, there are many who desperately need to have some encouragement and have their burden shared. As a matter of fact, if you look at the context of this passage, he says, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Kind of the thought here is that people struggle with sin and people struggle with difficulties and things like that. And so they need someone who will come and help them, who will come and bear their burdens so they do not have to go through it alone. I think it's one of the things we need to realize as Christians is that we do not live by ourselves. We cannot function by ourselves. God has called us to live together as a family of faith. And so when we try to do it on our own, to be quite honest with you, we're not going to succeed. It's just not going to work that way. That's not how God has designed us. But he says here, if we do that, if we love one another, or rather if we carry each other's burdens, we fulfill the law of Christ. And I think that gets to the idea of loving one another. And so that's why I want to draw your attention to the book of Matthew, chapter 22. If we look at Matthew 22, 34 through 40, we see what Paul means when he talks about fulfilling the law of Christ, because this is the great commandment that we are given, and it is the law of Christ. Matthew 22, 34 through 40. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. When we think about this passage, it is one that we're probably quite familiar with. It's one that I would say is and has been very instrumental in shaping the way we understand Jesus and the way we understand his priorities. And we are told in Galatians that we should carry each other's burdens to fulfill the law of Christ. And here we come back to what is Christ called us to do? What is the central focus of how he has called us to live? And it is found in these verses. He has called us very clearly to do two things. Look at what they are. He says that we should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is, in essence, the one thing that would take care of most of what we deal with. It would take care of our problems. It would fix our misplaced priorities. It would do all of those things if we simply would love God with all of our heart. And we struggle to do this. It's not easy. I don't think he said it because it was simple. It is very difficult to do. It's not something that we can just make happen overnight. If we do that, then I believe the other part falls in place. He says, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I was talking recently to a group of middle school students about this particular passage. And I talked to them about how easy it is most of the time for us to love ourselves. We just naturally do it. I like to take care of myself. When I get hungry, I go get myself something to eat. If I'm cold, I try to find some warmer clothes to put on. When I need something, if I am able to take care of that need, I do so. And even more than that, a lot of times if I want something, even if I don't need it, I am still pretty apt to go and to take care of that need or that want. I'll go do it. I'll go buy myself something that I don't really need. If you come to my office, you find that it's full of books, and when I see a book that I want, I normally like to add it to my library. I take care of myself. Well, Jesus tells us that we should have that same desire and same vigor that we normally use to take care of ourselves when we look at other people. We often don't do that. We'll take care of ourselves but not worry about those around us. And the great tragedy of that is that we often will let people remain in their sin, remain in their heartache and their disappointment, because we do not care enough to actually go and meet their needs, to go and to carry their burdens. Look what he says happens if we do these two things. Look at what a difference it makes. Look at what it does. It changes everything. He says, on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. If you go back to the Old Testament, that is the bulk of both of those. It's between the law and the prophets. And everything that they said, page after page that we read in the Old Testament, he says can be condensed down to just these two commands. Everything else would fall in place if we would love God with all that we are and if we would love the people around us. If we don't do this, I'm afraid that we're never going to experience the best that God has for us. If this is not a priority for us, if we don't find it a priority to give God our entire life, to love Him with all that we are, and out of that love other people, we simply will not be who He's called us to be. And we're going to suffer for it because we're not going to have the relationships that God has planned for us. We're not going to have the experiences that we could have in enjoying God and being satisfied in Him. And frankly, other people are going to suffer too. There are many people around us who need us. They need our love. They need our help. They need us to carry their burdens. They need us to be with them during times of great trouble. And if we as believers in Christ, do not take up this call to carry burdens and fulfill the law that Christ has set for us, this great law of compassion and love, if we do not have that, if we do not embrace that, then the unfortunate reality is that God is not going to be glorified in the way that He desires for us to glorify Him. He has offered us something great. He has offered us the ability to be His children and to follow Him and to know Him and to be with Him forever. Why would we not want to take that good news and that great offering that He has made for us and give it to others and use it to help others and use it to see the world radically changed for Christ? I hope you'll think about these verses in this Bible study this week, and I hope that you'll join us for the next one. I hope that God will speak to you through His Word. Our hope is at First Baptist Eichard that you have a blessed day and that God speaks to you. We hope that you will know Him, that you will love Him. And as always, if you do not have a church home here in our community, we hope that you'll join us on Sunday here at First Baptist Eichard as we worship God together and celebrate what He has done for us. We hope and pray that you have a wonderful week, and we hope you join us next time.